Well, here we are at the end of 2025. I can't believe it. This year has literally flown by. And it's been a really fun and exciting year on the podcast. We did a rebrand in June and went from A Life Worth Being to Midlife Strategies for Badass Women. And I got to tell you, things are going great. Listenership has increased. Y'all are doing amazing things, sharing the episodes, commenting, and rating the show. And I really, really, really appreciate you all for being here week after week and sharing the love with my guests. And now it's my turn to give back. I'm going to do a little countdown show of the top 10 episodes from 2025. It's a very special episode, and I want to look back at the conversations that hit the hardest, landed the deepest, and sparked the biggest shifts in all of you. These are the episodes that you listened to, that you shared, that you talked about the most. You know, it's not about popularity or about perfection. It's about truth and courage and the women choosing themselves in bold, brave ways. And I gotta tell you, this lineup is gonna kick some ass. So I've got a little 3 to 5 minute snippet of each of these episodes. And in the bottom of the show notes, I'm gonna put links to each of the episodes so that you can go back and relive them. And also go back and see what else happened in 2025, because there's a lot of episodes that didn't make the list. So I'm gonna kick things off. Coming in at number 10, Kristen Chimack. Her episode, The Cost of Staying, Why Playing It Safe is Riskier Than You Think. So Kristen's coming in at number 10, and this conversation is a wake-up call for anyone who knows that they're outgrowing their life, that they have been, tolerating things, and they know that it's time to let it all go. So Kristen breaks down the hidden cost of staying where you feel comfortable and why playing it safe may not be the biggest risk at all. So let's jump in to a little snippet from Kristen's episode.
It was the company my dad had worked at as well. So that organization had been a part of my life since as long as I can remember. And everything that's happened in my life, I really, can attribute to somehow to that organization. It was great when it was great. And then when it wasn't so great, it wasn't so great. And I'd been there from a payment clerk part-time when I was in college, and then left when I was an executive running their public relations department. And the last 4 or 5 years, I just found myself, probably even last 10 years, found myself in the situation of driving into work thinking, gosh, there has to be more. I want to do other things, and adjusting my retirement timeline earlier and earlier. And then the last 4 years, I couldn't ignore that whisper anymore. And I talk about the whispers a lot in my book that just came out, The Cost of Staying. But I got to the point where I just felt like, you know what, I have to make this change for myself and my well-being, and really started to think about what was the cost of staying versus the cost of leaving. So, I was super focused for a long time on the cost of leaving, like giving up the identity of being an executive at a large organization and the benefits and the paycheck and the bonus and the relationships. And when I started to think about what's the cost of staying, my mental health, time with family, relationships, working in something that I felt passionate about, that all of a sudden started to really outweigh the cost of leaving. And so I really took my courage from that, and from my husband, who was super supportive, when he just one day asked, what's the worst that could happen? And I'm like, well, the worst that could happen is I go back to corporate America. And so we just had a lot of talks, and through that was able to decide I was going to leave, started my coaching business, and now I help others kind of find their authentic self and, decide whether they want to stay where they are or move on to something else. And then I also started the hotel sourcing business, which is super fun, helping people place their events in hotels.
Wow, that's a lot. Let me just put a timeline on this. Now, how long ago did you decide to leave? When you okay, this is my exit date. So how long ago was that?
So my actual exit date was about 19 months ago.
Okay. For who's
I had
counting?
been, yeah, it's about 19 months ago. I had been thinking about leaving probably for a good 10 years, and then finally got up the courage that yes, I was going to leave. And it still took me about 9 months after that to kind of work through just, everything that you need to think about, from the financial aspects of it to becoming comfortable with like what's everybody going to think when I go do this crazy thing. So yeah, it did take a bit of time to kind of work through all that.
Coming in at number 9, I've got Betsy Papine. Her episode is Breaking Free, Overcoming Life's Boxes. This episode is all about the boxes we inherit, accept, and unknowingly reinforce. Betsy shares how to recognize them, challenge them, and finally step outside of the roles that no longer fit.
The thread through all of this, what I found was this feeling of containment. And, if you've ever bought a mattress online, like on Amazon, like it will literally come to your door in a box.
Yeah.
And you think, how can a king size mattress fit in that box? And sure enough, you open up the box and 3 days later, you've got a king size mattress. It's expanded to the size it was meant to be. But I felt like I was in that box and I hadn't no one's ripped it open. I hadn't ripped myself open. I couldn't expand and be my full, true, authentic self. So that's why, I have all these remembrances and flashbacks of times I felt this confinement and felt like I couldn't say anything, or I couldn't do anything, or I felt stuck, or I was afraid that what would people think? What would I think of myself? What would my family think if I took this direction? And so I wrote the book about my stories. And then when I wrote the book and it really was well received, and people reached out to me with their own stories. And so that's why I'm here, because it seems like it's a universal problem or a universal issue, whether some of us perhaps are more along the growth path than others in terms of awareness. But we're all placed in these boxes because it's a human condition. You don't see other animal species putting their colleagues in boxes. And how do we negotiate them when they no longer serve us? Yeah. So that's my mission, is to help people recognize boxes that they may not be aware of, and they may be aware of, but they're too afraid to make change. And then another surprising thing that's come from this is a lot of people have reached out to me and said, I didn't realize the number of people I'm putting them in boxes. Like they didn't realize the boxes that they were putting people in, and how that could be harmful and a disservice to them and their children.
Yeah, yes, I agree 1000% on all of that. And I I had to laugh a couple of times because when you were talking about the mattress episode, yes, I have purchased those mattresses but it reminded me, because I was a big Dick Van Dyke fan back in the day, the black and white version, the Dick Van Dyke Show. And I remember Laura received a box and she was so curious about it and she couldn't help herself. It wasn't for her. I think, Laura Petrie, so I'm dating myself severely, but it was it was an inflatable boat, right? So she's trying to hide the fact that she opened it from Rob. And of course, it's in the middle of the living room taking up all the space. So yeah, she let the mattress or let the boat out of the box for sure. And at number 8, I have Ruth E. Wilson. I met Ruth in a mastermind and I instantly fell in love with her energy, with the way she's lived her life. And her episode is called Conquering Clouds: Wisdom, Adventure, and Spirit-Led Living. This conversation is poetic, it's grounded, and it's very deeply inspiring. I also have read her book, and I highly encourage you to do the same. Ruth reminds us that adventure is not about recklessness. It's about listening and trusting and following the quiet inner nudge that says that there is more out there.
eventually I saw this little space between the vineyards and between the vines, and I said to Tanis, we're going in there. And descended from 9 to 6, and then slowly pulled the red line and gently let the hydrogen out, and a little bit of sand, and came down, and then finally found that little bit of wind that took me back over the tops about just a few inches above the vines, and then landed. I pulled the line, the red line, and we landed at the end of the vine, and the balloon just settled in that tiny space. It was such a sense of relief and achievement after all that time and responsibility, I guess. We just packed up the balloon envelope a little bit into a ball and threw our sleeping bags on the ground and just fell asleep until our 2 chase vehicles arrived that had been following us from Switzerland. And then the vineyard owner arrived, and that's all another story. It's all in the book. But look, it was just, and then so I've been really grateful that wasn't more negative experience is a nice way to say it. But earlier than that, in 1989, I was invited to go marlin fishing. I'd been living in Calgary, Canada, and I flew back flying balloons there. And I flew home just for 6 weeks. And I was invited to go marlin fishing at Byron Bay. And I thought, God's answering my wishes. I've always wanted to go marlin fishing. Why?
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Exactly. And so I got on this boat. There was the owner, the skipper, myself, and another balloon pilot, an American guy who lived up in that area who I just met, Sean. Pardon me. And so we start out, and then we get to the Ballina Bar, and then I didn't know sandbars or bars were dangerous. I knew nothing about the ocean. Anyhow, a 7-meter wave picked up the boat, threw it back on itself, split it in 2. I went to the bottom of the ocean drowning, and my spirit left my body and floated above me to the right, and it said, Ruth, see where your collar is. If you kick, you will find air. So I kicked and kicked. I broke the surface and I gasped for much needed air. And Sean swam towards me and we grabbed each other's hand, and then fate wasn't finished with us. We were dragged 3 to 5 kilometres out in the rough ocean.
My God.
I had my head was split open and blood was dripping on my left shoulder. I did have bad back injuries, but I didn't know that. I was in a state of adrenaline or whatever you are in those situations. And and I did learn a lot about energy, which I might share later when you're in the belly of a wave and on top of a wave and all that story. But after nearly 2 hours in this rough, cold ocean without life jackets, I saw the shark, the fins coming towards me, and I thought, I'm going to die by a shark. And suddenly I heard Sean say, Ruthie, they're dolphins, they're with us, we will be saved, through the cloud of my brain. And it was a pod of dolphins, and they just encircled us, and they kept jumping around and dancing in a circle, and the rescue guys were way over near the wreckage trying to find us, and they saw the dolphins, and they sped over and lifted us out of the ocean. And while I was in hospital recovering, I had this amazing experience, whether it was a dream or what it was, but I was underwater swimming and these 3 dolphins came up, and I had this mental communication with the middle dolphin and said, we want you to build this blue balloon. And they showed me this gorgeous royal blue balloon with golden dolphins on it. And I said, that's going to cost me $41,000. And they said, yes, but you've been given this and that, and telling me things about my life.
And at number 7, my friend Jen Axe. Jen has got an amazing amount of very infectious energy, and it comes through in this episode. Jen's episode is called The Body Knows, Reclaiming Confidence and Connection. This episode is a powerful reminder that healing does not start in the mind, it starts in the body. Jen shares how reconnecting with your physical self can restore confidence, safety, and deep self-trust.
We come out, when you think about it, we come out into this world gesturing. It's part of every culture.
They were like, "Ah."
Right. We use our hands to help us process and express. And we
and
just
explore things when
explore.
touching and just, yeah.
Exactly. Communicate and learn. But we don't understand. It's so natural and intuitive that it's never really been broken down, at least in the way that I was learning about it. So I kept saying there's so much power in gesture. And I realized that's the name of my practice. As I realized it was a practice, I didn't even know what I was doing until I worked with hundreds of people during COVID. And I was like, oh my
Wow.
God, this is a thing. So the power
Crazy.
of gesture is my practice. And that's what I do. I help people unlock their innate body wisdom, this intelligence within, by using the hands, which is a somatic body set practice, right?
Yeah.
And it's incredible how we can really transform. We have so much power to be able to move and shift our doubt into empowerment or our worry into calm. Whatever the emotions are, we can transform that energy into something that feels good. We also, through the practice, look at all of the emotions as almost like little people, like these parts of ourselves teaching us about who we are, what we want, and where we're going in our life. And that's where that embodied leadership comes in, to like really start from within, learn about who we are, get reconnected to that, to our values, to what it is we want, and then lead from the inside out in all the ways in our life,
And when you say that about the emotions being like little people, and then you said from the inside out, it made me think of the Disney animated film Inside Out. Have you seen it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
They're all there in the control panels in your mind, and they're like anger and sadness and all the. I love that. I love that so much.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. And the thing is with that is that when we look at these parts of ourselves through that lens, we can show those parts compassion and love, and as opposed to shame and guilt and judgment. So when we embrace all of those parts, then they calm down.
Yes, they do. And if you watch the movie, it's like, and when they all start to work together and one is not dominating the other ones, right? Then
oh my God, I need to watch this film again.
You haven't? Yeah, I know. I don't
even think I ever saw it, actually.
Oh, really? It's animated. It's beautiful. It's a Pixar film, and it's called Inside Out, and it's about what's going on in this young girl's mind. And it's kind of like everybody has these, things like it'll switch to like the father and his little emotional people going on in there, and they're at this big control panel in your mind, like pulling the levers and doing the things, and it's fun.
Exactly right.
It's brilliant. At number 6, I've got Liz Potter and her episode, Rewire Your Nervous System, Intuition and Energy Healing. Liz I also met in a mastermind group, and once again, we just hit it off. I knew that we'd be friends, and I knew that her episode would be very powerful, and in fact, it was. This conversation dives into nervous system regulation, intuition, and what it really takes to feel safe enough to expand. Liz brings clarity, compassion, and practical wisdom that listeners keep coming back to again and again. Liz and I are in a mastermind together, and that's how we met. And I was very intrigued by just all the things that she does. So give me a little bit of a background of, what brought you to the work that you do now?
Yeah. About 14, 15 years ago, I began to have psychic experiences. It wasn't something that I was asking for, looking for, driving for. It was just something that landed in my life. And there was nothing that could do to turn it off. There was nothing that could do to stop it. It was just something that was unfolding for me.
Wow.
And so instead of fighting it, I decided to embrace it. And so over the last 14 years, I have evolved with those psychic experiences. That's been Reiki. I've done Reiki for about now 15 years as well. That I started that as part of my evolution with the psychic experiences. And then I started to kind of evolve more into a kind of like a medical intuitive, and doing a lot more intuitive healing is what I describe it as. And that has evolved now into nervous system work. So I
Mm.
still do a lot of psychic or intuitive readings. I still do a lot of spirit readings. To me, they're different in the sense that a spirit reading is directly connecting with those who've crossed.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and a psychic reading is much more of that kind of traditional, like, um, future casting, or what's happening over the next year, like that type of reading. There's a very different energy to it for me as an intuitive. And then last year, well, about 18 months ago now, I got very, very ill. And it was a massive mystery as to what the root cause of that illness was. And even though I'm an intuitive illness, I have a very hard time pinpointing things in my own health. It's like the contractor's house is never done, right? They're too
Right.
busy working
The
on everybody else.
cobbler's kids are walking around barefoot. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I'm great at helping everybody else, but being able to tune into my own body at the time was very, very difficult for me, as it related to health. And I went to a specialist, and I had to have a colonoscopy. And in my colonoscopy, the surgeon said, "Things look great, Liz." And I said, "But they're not. They're not great." And she said something that activated something for me. She said that just because we have our own kind of central nervous system doesn't mean that we're good, right? Where our guts have their own nervous system, the enteric nervous system.
Oh.
And you can do all the meditation you want, but if your guts aren't calm, you're not calm. And that sent me down
Huh.
to another activation for me, into more nervous system directed work. And that's where I created the program that worked for me. I developed it over the course of the year, and then I've been using it, of course, on myself primarily. But now I've opened it up for clients as well. So I developed Nourish Your Nervous System as a result of that experience of being sick and healing myself through nervous
Wow.
system
That's
work.
impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting that there's like your central nervous system, because we all think of it as just like, if we can, be calm and grounded and our nervous system is settled and whatever. But I didn't realize that all the internal systems have their own kind of nervous
Yeah.
system.
Yeah. I didn't
So
know
they
that
can be
either.
out of whack. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. And number 5, we are in the top 5. I've got Becky Livingston. Her episode, If Not Now, When? Reclaiming Life Through Slow Living. This episode is an invitation to stop rushing and start listening. Becky shares how slowing down can actually be the most radical and life-changing decision that you can make in midlife. A little hint here, it involves travel.
Rachel had a dying wish to keep traveling the world. She had been an avid traveler when she was alive. She'd gone off to New Zealand and Australia as soon as she got the all clear from her doctors after her course of radiation. And she'd been to Mexico with friends and Costa Rica. She went to Europe on her own when she was 20. And I'd taken her and my other daughter to Australia on a teaching exchange when Rachel was about 12. So it was in her blood, a lot like it was
Yeah.
for me. And so this was something she wanted to do, to keep traveling. So obviously she's not there, but we've got her ashes. And about a year after she died, I'd gone back to work as a teacher and things were getting worse and worse. And I thought, something's got to give. And so I quit my teaching job. I was 53 at the time. I put my stuff in storage, packed a suitcase with some of her ashes in a Ziploc bag, and I set off. And I was gone for 26 months. That's why I only ever travel with a carry-on suitcase. It's why I live a very minimalist lifestyle. I wanted to be as close to her as possible, and I needed to be as raw and vulnerable and simple and minimalist as I possibly could be, to be as close to her as I wanted to be. Does that make sense?
In doing that, how did that help you process your grief?
Well, I think the being alone was huge, because when you're trying to navigate a journey through grief, the loss of my daughter, I believe that you need a lot of silence and a lot of solitude. You need so much time to reflect. You need to go really into your grief if you're going to move through it and if you're going to move forward. And that's the most courageous and vulnerable thing, because it hurts so much. So having these house sits allowed me that time, thinking, walking, journaling, reading, more walking, just that kind of thing. Every now and again, I would go and visit a friend or family. I didn't really want to be around people. And when I was, I remember thinking, oh, this is so loud. People talking, because I just had my own company the whole time. So that experience was incredibly necessary to the whole process during that trip. That place, that's where I felt joy for the first time in, I don't know how long. I actually didn't know if I would ever feel that again. So you can imagine what that felt like. Before we go, I would say, if Rachel were here.
What is one thing that you can leave people with? What's that first step that they can take, or how can they?
Well, I just want to say, if Rachel were here, she would say, because she loved Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, all you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you. And that was on the program of her celebration of life. It's the tattoo that my daughter has on her shoulder. And I think it says everything. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And she'd also say, don't wait, because if not now, when?
Exactly. We don't know. The time that's been given us, we don't know. We don't know how long that is. And if we don't take advantage of the time that we have, if not when, if not now, when? Exactly. At number 4, I've got Jennifer Spohr. Did you like that? That was like a little rhyme. Jennifer's episode is Burnout to Breakthrough, a spiritual awakening at midlife. This conversation speaks directly to the woman who feels exhausted, but knows that burnout is not the end of the story. Jennifer shares how breakdown often can become the doorway to a profound awakening.
There was this one moment that was really the catalyst that I remember as clear as day, which has been many years now. But I was sitting by my mom's bedside, and it was one of the last times I would see her. It was just a few days before she transitioned. And my phone started blowing up, from my work. There was an issue. Okay. And the universe was giving me probably like the 1 millionth opportunity to choose again, right? So I found myself just very present to that moment, looking at my phone and what was happening there. And then looking over at my mom, understanding that this was probably the last time, or one of the last times, that I was going to see her tangibly, here. And that was it. That was the moment. Like it was like this light switch flipped on. And I just said to myself in that moment, I'm done. Like, I'm done allowing myself to be stuck. I'm taking my power back. Sure, I'm still scared shitless, because I know what I know what that moment meant. It meant that, like, this is it. There's like no turning back. But my courage exceeded my fear in that moment, and that's what I teach a lot and say a lot to people is like, being fearless isn't about being without fear. It's about being conscious to it, being present to it, and consciously choosing to live in your truth anyways, and so that's what happened. I was single at the time, drove across the country by myself, and then things just started unfolding after that. And that's often how it works. It's like, we don't have the entire path laid out before us. Our human minds wants that, right? Because we want to feel the comfort of the knowing, but it's really in the unknowing where the magic happens, where all of the expansion happens. And all of that unfolded after I made that move. Now, it can feel very scary to follow that voice at first, right? Because it's guiding you on a new path. We're getting back into that realm of the unknown.
Absolutely. Things that are out of the norm or out of our norm, I should say, that is going to scare us, right? Because we do create these nice, safe little places called our comfort zone. And when we deviate from that, it's like, oh, I can't go there, right? But that's when stuff happens. It's right at that, at the edge of your comfort zone. Just take that other step and you're going to be in a completely different place. But everybody thinks it's going to be a scary, bad place. Like, what if and then the stories start to happen. Well, if I quit my job and if I move cross country, then this is going to happen and this and this. And then you got this whole long story that you've already created and you haven't even done anything. Right.
And if we're too afraid to do that, right, then how are things really going to change? So we're really living in a very transformational time right now, and it really is no longer a nice to have to follow your intuition. It really is becoming fundamental to our existence here.
And in the number 3 spot, 2 of the most wonderful humans on the planet, Dana Riskier and Kristen Sexton, with their empowering episode called Rescued Hearts: How Horses' Healing Love Changed Everything. This conversation with Dana and Kristen was on the heels of the initial release of their beautiful documentary film called Rescued Hearts. They launched it in May. I met them for the first time in person at the Illumination Film Festival where they introduced their film. It was amazing. The energy in the crowd was amazing. And since then, they've gone on to host multiple community screenings with just an incredible amount of energy coming from the film, coming from the audience, and the discussions that follow the film at a screening. It was my pleasure to chat with both of them after the film was released. And this episode explores grief, healing, and the extraordinary wisdom of horses. It is raw, tender, and unforgettable.
Because we filmed there, it unlocks something for people that I think they don't even realize, like they can see themselves somewhere in the journey of Rescued Hearts. And so watching that unfold, and then, Kristen can decide if she wants to share, but I've watched my partner in life and partner in filmmaking literally transform over the last 2.5 years and open her heart in ways I never thought possible, especially because she's not a horse person. She, in fact, was afraid of them going into this journey. And then to end our time in South Africa, just a week ago, we were there for 2 weeks, and watching her experience her own healing session with a horse, with Candace and her herd. I don't think any of the beings in that experience will ever be the same. And what an incredible way for us to almost like it was like the start of something, and then it was a continuation and an end to something. I don't even know how to explain it in words, but it was like the most profound thing for us to experience after finishing this film.
That's amazing. And having seen the film in its entirety, it was a very beautiful way to pull the whole film together. And it definitely was a thread that went, it was just beautiful. And the footage was gorgeous. Christiana, you're amazing behind the camera. And I'm really happy that you were able to experience. Was this your first experience with a horse healing adventure, Christiana?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, I would say the only other small taste that I had was before we even started this film. I think Dana and I were still just friends. And she took me to this woman in Flagstaff who's a friend of hers. And the woman walked me out into the herd. And she just asked me a couple questions. And I was like, well, the horses don't want to be around me. And they don't like me. And I'm feeling nervous. And she's like, so how do you feel with people? And tears, and this was probably 5 minutes. So I had that as a reference point. And I think the fear is an interesting word. I think it was like anxiety, it's like, I don't know, there was a few things, but we did have a friend who was really injured by a horse years ago, like seriously injured. And it was just a freak accident. And so I kind of had that in my mind as we started filming, and I would visualize her accident as we were going to film places. And then I realized that that's not good. So then I was stressed about the stress I had, and I had anxiety about the anxiety I had. And it just felt like this, oh my God. And at some point, though, I was seeing so much happen I say like the camera was almost my protection. So the camera gave me space where I could, zoom in or have a long lens. But then what I was witnessing was so profound, and yet it wasn't me, but I could feel it. And then as I was in the editing process, I could feel it.
In the number 2 spot, I've got Erin Washington. This episode is a kick. Erin is so much fun to talk to, and she has got so much energy, and she has been through a lot, and she is not afraid to talk about anything. So her episode is called From Perfectionist to Purpose. This episode resonated with so many women who are tired of chasing perfection and are ready to live with intention. Erin shares what happens when you release control and you step into purpose instead. So join me listening to Erin and my conversation. It is very fun and very spirited.
I was the captain my junior and senior year. We were back-to-back state champions. Soccer was my world. I ended up playing Division I college soccer and trained all summer. I'd also like to say, so did my younger 3 sisters, but nobody was like me about it. So perfectionistic and driven and crazy. And when my career ended in college, I didn't see any other value for myself. And now I have a nonprofit for teen girls, and I always like, what do you do? And if they lead with like a sport, I'm like, but what else? Because that's not the only thing. Like I'm all over it now, and especially with my daughter. But when you put everything into one thing and that's your value and your identity, when it's gone, for me, I fell into depression, bulimia, and it was something that I hid from the girls on my team. I was still living in the soccer house and had put on weight because I wasn't in a Division I strength and conditioning program anymore. It was very secretive and isolating, and I kind of came out of the mess and stopped doing the behaviors, but I was still very depressed. I was still restricting, very wrapped up in body image. When I met he's still my husband. He's my ex. We're not divorced. I filed 2 years ago. I'm sure we'll get into that. But I didn't have any confidence, and I started dating my husband when he was in the prime of his career in the NFL. He was a Pro Bowl linebacker. We had 2 kids, and after I had my second child, it was like I finally got things together with my body, and it was the opposite of what I'd done my whole life, and I was obsessive and restrictive. I wrote a book called Squats and Margaritas about finding balance, and I thought my purpose was to teach women how to find their best bodies and be like, girls, get off the treadmill and lift. And it's not about restriction. Have the margarita. Don't have 3, but when you put something on the pedestal and it's like tempting and enticing, that's all you want. And I changed my body and I have like abs on the cover and I'm holding a dumbbell and a margarita and I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. But in that book, I shared about my bulimia, and women would DM me and say, me too. You're the only person I've told. My vulnerability gave them permission to be vulnerable. So I started leaning more into that. And during the pandemic, I was being vulnerable on Instagram, and a radio station program director was watching me every week. She called and gave me a show. Squats and Margaritas was this podcast. And then you mentioned a transition. I transitioned away from margaritas after drinking way too much during the pandemic, and found myself trying to unpack that every week with guests that were just as vulnerable. And it became me doing therapy every week. And I was like, why is this even called Squats and Margaritas? So I leaned into therapy, where I have coaches, relationship coaches and mental health professionals come on every week and have me work through and unpack whatever I'm going through. It's like, I was totally leaning into like fitness, and now I'm like mental health. And I was worried it would be seen as like, oh God, like what does she even do? I needed to like, because I leaned in hard on Squats and Margaritas, but I kind of just you got to let it evolve and kind of, Squats and Margaritas had to happen. And it was just getting me to this, doing a show called Squats and Margaritas and only doing therapy. Like, and then Gabby Bernstein came on my show and was like, I said, I can't change it because I'm looking at, I barely drink, but on Squats and Margaritas, she's like, change it. You've evolved. Like, this is an evolution of your brand. It's not, but I'm like, like you trademark everything and you push it everywhere. And I was like, it's going to kill my brand. And she goes, this elevates your brand. And if Gabby Bernstein tells you to do something, you do it. No, I love my kids. Everything's great. I would have been the same way. Moment. Yeah. But when you finally step into just alignment with exactly who you are, and it may not have happened for you yet. Like I say, if it hasn't and you're not profoundly lit up, look at something that you are burying, something in your past. Maybe it's that dark thing. Maybe it doesn't have to be super dark, but like something that maybe happened to you that you've never unpacked and you don't want anybody to figure out. Like, that is where the magic is. Get in there, get it off of you. And then if you're willing to share the story, there's tons of people still in that mess.
And at the top of my top 10 list, coming in at number 1, is Dianette Wells. This was a really touching conversation. Dianette is an amazing person who has suffered tremendous loss, and the name of her episode is called Another Step Up the Mountain: Adventure, Loss, and Living. This conversation is about resilience and grief, courage, and choosing to keep moving forward even when life changes everything. It has touched many hearts in a big way and earned its place at the top of the countdown. Please join me for the number 1 podcast, Dianette Wells, Another Step Up the Mountain.
If we can just apply that, step forward thing, that one step up the mountain, it works out usually.
Yeah, one step up the mountain. Where have I heard that before? Oh, I know. It's the title of your book.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that is another thing to take on. But before we talk about your book, I'd love to go back just a little bit. And when I loved what you said about just try something, you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. You don't have to be the expert in that thing, but just try it. If you don't like it, don't do it anymore. And I think that some people think that maybe because how they've lived in, whatever identity they're in now I have to be really good at it. But like you said, meeting strangers is intimidating. Trying something new because you look silly, you're afraid that people are going to judge you. But the experience that you had with the Dragon Boat folks, I love that. And they're like, yeah, come on in. You don't know. Maybe everybody there is new to the Dragon Boat thing, So everybody's just out there trying something new. Like you said, you never know who you're going to meet and what the experience is going to be like.
What you just said about you don't have to be an expert. You don't even have to be good at it. But if brings you joy. Like, I don't have a green thumb at all, but I love to garden. So I'll still plant stuff 50-50 if it survives, but it brings me joy. I'm not good at it, but I like it. So I'll
Yeah.
continue doing it.
And that's all that matters, is something that fills us up.
Yep.
Right? Because there's enough things that take our energy away that, we have to recharge somehow. And if you've got to find things and people that, fill you up, that make you smile, that give you joy. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, I thought it was interesting when you said your mountain persona, your climbing persona, and because climbing Mount Everest is no joke. And I think you've done it, what, twice now? Yeah. Okay. So that's no joke. And then you say that, but most of the time I'm sort of fear-based. I'm kind of, those things don't seem to match up for me.
No, the mountains and a race course, those are my comfortable places where I'm
Mm.
very happy. I'm out in nature. I'm testing myself. Um, these bike rides and these races and the mountains, when you first start, you don't know if you're going to summit or cross the finish line, but it's the joy of showing up at a start line with all these other crazy people and seeing what happens. I mean, there's joy in the unknown and the adventure of things. And it's an adventure to me because I don't know the outcome. It's probably why I don't do triathlons, because for me, they're boring. You just kind of go point A to point B and not a lot of adventure in that. So I like the adventure of not knowing. And and then once you conquer that race course, you get to the finish line or you summit the mountain. And it's like, okay, that was hard, but it was fun. And yeah, so that place, which is home, I've got a vacuum and mop and, the usual stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds more like the triathlons. We need the vacuuming, the mopping, all that kind of stuff, right? It's, it's going to happen. Uh, but what you said about not knowing the outcome, I think that we all get super hung up on what is the end goal? What is the expectation? I am supposed to, do this. And letting go of those expectations, letting go of those end goals, even though the goal is to summit, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. And that's, like you said, that's the fun part, right? It's all about the journey. Well, my beautiful listeners, that is a wrap for 2025. I hope that you have enjoyed revisiting the top 10 episodes of Midlife Strategies for Badass Women. I cannot wait to bring you more amazing guests in 2026. I've already got the lineup for January started, and we're going to kick some butt this year. And I love that you are along for the ride. So thank you again for all of your support, sharing the episode, reviewing and rating. And if you know someone you think might be a great guest, please send them my way. Until then, have a beautiful, safe, an amazing new year, and may 2026 make all your dreams come true, but you got to put yourself into it. This is your host, Sue Willoughby, signing off for 2025, and I will see you next year on Midlife Strategies for Badass Women.